Feed the neighborhood with a tailgate-ready Big Bow Box. It's bow time.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Extra Points. We're here at Bridgeforth Stadium where JMU just defeated Bucknell in their season opener. Maybe not what a lot of people expected. I think we can start with the biggest talking point, and that is the quarterback situation. We saw 3 different quarterbacks play, and the play really elevated, and Coach kind of alluded to it that it sounds like Jordan McLeod is kind of the guy from here. So what are kind of y'all's thoughts on the quarterback situation and kind of assessing Alonzo Barnett's start?
I think the quarterback situation was everything this game. I mean, everyone saw Alonzo, and we saw him struggle. And, you know, he showed a little bit of inexperience. I think, especially when you saw Jordan come in, even though Jordan, you know, he did make a few mistakes. There were some plays he didn't capitalize. You could see the amount of experience and how much that helped him in game time situations. And, you know, credit to, you know, Brett Griffiths at the very end of the game. I mean, he only had 2 for 2, but he seemed pretty calm and collected. And so I think it leads to a really big question at quarterback. Cignetti sort of hinted at the end of the press conference that Jordan would be the starter week 2. So I believe, you know, unless Cignetti tries to mess with us again, that is the plan moving forward. But yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how the program continues to develop all of its quarterbacks and how it continues to plan for the future as the offense gets more assimilated.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, Alonzo only having 3 completions and 15 yards in the first half. I mean, Cignetti almost, like, he compared it to, like, after a few, like, an interception the first drive of the game, Cignetti compared it to, like, a golfer almost being afraid to swing a golf club. And he added that it could come, I mean, Alonzo's only a redshirt freshman, and we saw Jordan McLeod come in, who's definitely been in game time situations like this before. Like, it could just be kind of the experience from a standpoint. I mean, first start. So, I mean, tonight was a big night, I think, all around for quarterbacks. But while the quarterback performance might not have been top notch, one I think was definitely the running backs. So.
Yeah, and you talked about the running backs. Can you kind of assess the performance? Kaiden Black had a big first half, and just overall really solid night from that group.
Yeah, the running backs tonight, I mean, Solomon Van Horst, Latrell Palmer, Kaiden Black, I mean, all really picked up for JMU's offense, especially when the passing wasn't. I mean, like you said, Kaiden Black having over 100 yards in the first half. Like, I'm pretty sure it was like around 184 total yards in the first half, and 172 or something like that was all rushing. So definitely a big pickup for the running backs tonight.
You know, just speaking on the running backs, I mean, there were points in this game where it reminded me of like an 80s NFL game. I mean, it was just run after run after run. And, you know, I think the running backs really stepped up for the Dukes. I mean, you know, it wasn't the blowout that everyone was expecting, but I mean, the running backs really made it not just like a win, but a decisive win. And that's because, you know, they were continuing to generate offense when the passing game really just wasn't generating anything at all.
Yeah, and I think you kind of feel the fans' restlessness a bit as well. Like, this is not what we wanted. It was 17-3 at halftime. 15 yards from your starting quarterback is not something you kind of want in any game. So kind of see how Kirk Cignetti will go from here. But I think a lot of times this defensive group just gets overlooked. I think that's just kind of common in football. It's all about the offense and the quarterback. But the defense held their ground today. It wasn't the biggest performance, as they kind of alluded to in the press conference in the first half. They kind of let up some yards. But if you win a game and you only let up 3 points, I think that to a sense, like, that's a solid game. So can you kind of assess the key areas that y'all saw from the defense today?
Yeah, so, I mean, first drive of the game, the defense had a fumble recovery. Like, strong start for the defense. Obviously, Bucknell had a lot more yards gained in the first half than the second. So Cignetti and Torres Jones both spoke about how maybe not the defense's best performance from the first half, but definitely picked up some slack in the second and really just helped seal the game. I mean, Bucknell, I don't believe, passed the 50-yard line in the second half. So I think that was really big. Definitely I think there are areas in work for everywhere. I think there are areas of work for every position to work on in the next week, especially before playing UVA. So, but definitely not a bad start for the defense.
You know, you look at the defense and, you know, just at the most basic, you know, we can talk about total net yards, we can talk about all these different stats, but the most basic job of the defense is to keep points off the board, which they did. Now, a lot of it did come to Bucknell. I mean, frankly, kind of shooting themselves in the foot a few times. They went up for it on 4th down on a number of occasions, which I like the aggressive play calling, but it just really didn't work out for them. So they could have added a couple more field goals, and we'd probably be talking about maybe 6 or 9 points. But at the end of the day, they only scored 3, and that was the defense's job. And especially when you look at the second half, that second half to me was just, I mean, it was exactly what we were expecting from the JMU defense, especially against a team like Bucknell. I mean, it was punt after punt after punt after punt. I believe every single drive Bucknell had in the second half ended in a punt, and that's really what we were expecting.
Yeah, and obviously, like we talked about, a lot of areas for JMU to grow, but they obviously have a big matchup coming up next, an in-state rival. It's going to be kind of an emotional day. What are y'all looking forward to in that UVA game? UVA is coming off a big loss today against Tennessee, but kind of how does JMU approach that game to kind of set themselves up best for success, because they don't play here again for 28 days. That's 4 weeks, so 3 games. So that's kind of a long time until they'll be back here. How do they kind of now go on the road, improve in these areas?
You know, you look at that UVA matchup, there's so many unknowns going into it. I had a chance to watch a little bit of the Tennessee game. And, you know, UVA, you know, they're a team that, you know, they're missing a lot of talent. They're still very much rebuilding. They're coming off of this terrible tragedy. And they were able to go into Tennessee and play an SEC program. And yes, they did get blown out at the end of the day, but they hung tough with them for a good bit. And, you know, especially seeing how JMU, you know, didn't really have a lot of fire, I guess is the best term, you know, against Bucknell. There's a lot of unknowns going into this matchup. You know, I think as of right now, I would still predict a JMU win, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than I was initially expecting at the beginning of the day.
I'd have to agree with Jackson. Definitely a lot to look for in practice this week. I mean, a couple players spoke on it. Kalen Black, Reggie Brown, Signetti himself. So I think kind of figuring out those unknowns and tweaking some of those kinks that they found in the offense tonight and kind of getting more of a smoother rhythm going on, I think we'll definitely secure the win for JMU next week, but I don't think it's going to be easy.
Yeah, a lot of questions to figure out throughout this week for practice for JMU. They finished as 38-3 winners tonight over Bucknell. Thank you, Jackson and Kaiden, for joining me, and we'll look forward to covering more football for you throughout the season.